The Shoemaker Who Saw Eternity. In the early 17th century, in the small German town of Görlitz, lived a humble shoemaker who would become one of the most profound mystical philosophers in history, Jakob Böhme. Without formal education, Böhme claimed to have experienced a vision in which the very structure of God and creation was revealed to him. He saw reality as a divine drama unfolding within consciousness itself, where light and darkness, good and evil, unity and division, all arise within the infinite depth of what he called the divine abyss, or Ungrund. Böhme's insight was radical. God, before creation, was not yet fully conscious. The universe, and the human soul within it, are the means through which God comes to know himself. The Ungrund, the abyss before being. At the foundation of Böhme's cosmology lies the Ungrund, literally, the groundless ground. It is the ineffable source that precedes all being, a limitless potential without form, quality, or differentiation. In this abyss, there is no light or darkness, no good or evil, no consciousness as we know it, only the pure possibility of manifestation. Yet within this silent depth lies the eternal longing of God to reveal himself. This divine yearning, the will to be known, becomes the first movement of creation. As Böhme writes, the will desires to find itself, and in that desire, eternity begins to stir. Creation is thus not an act of external command, but an inner awakening within the Godhead, the emergence of awareness from the mystery of its own depths. The birth of polarity, light and darkness. For Böhme, consciousness arises through contrast. From the still abyss, divine will divides into two fundamental principles, light and darkness. Light represents revelation, harmony, and love, the aspect of God that gives, radiates, and knows. Darkness, by contrast, represents contraction, resistance, and the necessary tension that allows light to manifest. Without darkness, light could not be perceived. Without resistance, consciousness could not awaken. Thus, the divine unfolds not as pure perfection, but as dynamic polarity, a living relationship between opposites that generates the fire of awareness. In Böhme's vision, even suffering and conflict are woven into the cosmic process of God's self-realization. The world's dualities are not errors, but instruments of awakening. The divine fire, desire as the spark of creation. Between light and darkness arises what Böhme calls the divine fire, the passionate energy through which God's being becomes conscious. This fire is not destructive, but creative. It is the eternal will seeking love, the transformation of tension into harmony. In human terms, this fire lives as desire, the longing for union with the infinite. Every movement of life, from the turning of galaxies to the beating of a heart, expresses this same cosmic yearning. In all things, Böhme writes, there is a fire seeking the light. Consciousness, then, is not static awareness, but the flame of divine desire, forever kindling itself into self-recognition. Through this sacred fire, the universe becomes the mirror in which God beholds his own image. Humanity as the mirror of God. For Böhme, the human being occupies a central place in this divine drama. Humanity is not merely a creation of God, it is the consciousness through which God contemplates himself. Each soul contains the same polarity found in the cosmos, the dark root of will and the luminous birth of spirit. In our struggles, passions, and choices, the cosmic tension between light and darkness plays out on the stage of individual awareness. When we turn inward and awaken to the divine spark within, we participate in God's own self-revelation. This is why Böhme often called the human soul a microcosm of the divine macrocosm, the meeting point where heaven and earth, spirit and matter converge in awareness. The fall and the return. Böhme interprets the biblical story of the fall not as a punishment, but as part of the necessary process of divine realization. When consciousness becomes entangled in the outer world, in desire, ego, and separateness, it forgets its divine origin. Yet this descent into multiplicity allows for individual awakening, the rediscovery of the divine within limitation. Just as fire emerges through friction, consciousness matures through conflict. Redemption, for Böhme, is the reawakening of the light within darkness, the reconciliation of the divided self with its eternal source. This process mirrors God's own movement from unmanifest potential to luminous awareness. In returning to the divine within, the soul completes the very purpose of creation, the awakening of God through humanity, the cosmic Christ, the union of opposites. In Böhme's mystical theology, the figure of Christ represents the perfect balance of divine opposites, the unity of light and darkness, spirit and body, heaven and earth. Christ is not only a historical figure, but the archetype of divine consciousness made manifest in the world. Through the life and passion of Christ, the divine will is revealed as love triumphing over division. For Böhme, Christ's descent into the material world and resurrection symbolize the transformation of darkness into light within the human soul. The cosmic purpose of incarnation is not separation from the divine, but its realization in form. In this sense, the Christ principle is the inner awakening of the divine in all beings, the eternal birth of consciousness within creation. Ultimately, Jakob Böhme's vision invites us to see the universe and ourselves as expressions of the divine abyss awakening to awareness. Consciousness, in his view, is not human property, but divine process, the infinite knowing itself through the play of opposites. Every thought, emotion, and experience is part of this unfolding revelation. To live in awareness of this truth is to stand at the threshold of eternity, where darkness and light, suffering and joy, creation and creator are recognized as one. Böhme's mystical insight bridges theology, psychology, and cosmology into a single truth, that God is the groundless depth within us, eternally giving birth to consciousness through the dance of opposites. The awakening of the infinite within the finite. Jakob Böhme, the Shoemaker mystic, offered not dogma, but vision, a living understanding of the divine as consciousness in motion. In his revelation, God is not a distant being, but the fire of awareness within existence itself. The tension of opposites, light and darkness, good and evil, is not to be escaped, but understood as the crucible of awakening. Through the human soul, creation achieves its purpose, the infinite coming to know itself through the finite. Böhme's teaching remains as relevant today as ever, reminding us that every act of awareness, every moment of clarity, is God awakening within creation. The abyss is not beyond us. It is the silent depth of our own being, where consciousness is forever being born.